I think the first game that I ever beat was Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. This was when I was around 8 or 9 years old. I know, like, that's actually kind of old to beat your first game because I've been playing video games since I was 3, so it took a long time before I actually finished one. And that just has to do with me being terrible at video games as a kid. You could argue that I still am bad at video games, but I was really bad back then. Like, I could never finish a game for my life. I got stuck on levels and I just gave up and played something else. The funny thing is, I thought I beat Sonic Heroes for so many years because that's like one of my favorite games of all time. It was the first game I got on my PS2, which was my very first console. I thought for years that I actually completed that game, but I didn't realize there was a hidden secret ending with the Metal Sonic boss. Anyone who played Sonic Heroes knows what I'm talking about. I didn't even know that was a thing until years after I played it for the first time. So that's kind of funny. Yeah, I was like really, really bad at video games. I was so fucking clueless. And this was, of course, like way before YouTube was a thing. I couldn't just go look up a Let's Play or anything like that. I was pretty much on my own, and on my own, I was pretty fucking garbage. So, yeah. It wasn't until Crash 3 that I actually finished the game from the first level to the final boss. I'd never done that before. Even though there were so many games I loved as a kid. There was SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. I loved that shit. Fairly Odd Parents, Breaking the Rules, Jimmy Neutron, Attack of the Twonkies, Super Mario Brothers. There were so many games I played, I could not beat a single one of them. But the story of how I got into Crash 3 and how I beat that game is a pretty interesting one. So, I grew up with the PS2. I did not grow up with the PlayStation 1, so I didn't even know much about Crash Bandicoot and Spyro as a young kid. But I had a house upstate, and my cousin came up and visited one time, and she brought her PS2 console with a bunch of PS1 games. So I thought it was really cool because I'd never played any of these games before. And I'm like, wow, this is actually really cool that you have all these games on the PlayStation 1. You can play them on the PS2. So I checked out some of the games that she had, and one of those games was Crash Bandicoot 3. And from the first level, I was instantly hooked to the game. Even though it was an older game, the graphics were dated even back then in... This would be like 2007, 2008. The game was already close to being 10 years old. It still looked really good for its age. It aged quite well. I actually remember being really impressed by what they were able to pull off with the PlayStation 1 because I understood that the PS1 was a much older system and was much less powerful than the PS2. But I still looked at Crash 3 and I'm like, you know what, the graphics are actually pretty impressive. It's not bad. And yeah, I was just instantly hooked into the game. I loved it so much. The gameplay was fun. The level design was fantastic. Some of the best I've ever seen at that point in a video game. And I loved it. The whole time travel concept was neat. You know, warping through different levels and traveling through different time periods where, like, you're in the medieval age and then you're in the dinosaur age. And then, you know, towards the end of the game, you're in the far future. I thought it was really, really clever, the way they went about the overall direction of this game. It was really cool. But as far as, like, why Crash 3 was the game that I beat and why it was the first one, it's because, you know, as I was playing, I started to realize that I could not save my progress on the PS2. Because in order to save a PS1 game, in order to save your progress on the PS2, you had to have a PS1 memory card, and my cousin didn't have one. I didn't have one, of course, so I pretty much had to beat the entire game without saving. I mean, that's what people did back in the day with the Super Nintendo, but that was something that I had no experience with because I had my PS2 memory card, and I never had to worry about, like, you know, turning the system off and losing everything. Like, I was used to just being able to save my progress, and of course, you know, if you had a PS1, you could do that, or if you had the PS1 memory card, you could do that, but for some reason, PS1 games were not compatible with the PS2 memory card. So I'm like, oh shit. Like, I have to beat this game because I got this far already without saving. I have to see it through. So what I would do is that while my cousin was there, I think she stayed for like 4 days or 5 days, I would spend like half the day trying to beat this game. And, you know, when I was done for the night and I had to go to bed, I would leave the system on all night long and then just pick up where I left off the next day. It was probably not good for my system or my cousin's system, whatever, but that's what I would do. My cousin was cool with it. She's like, yeah, you gotta beat the game, and we would kind of like take turns, but I'd do most of the playing because she was pretty shitty with video games. And I'd say about 3 days later, I beat the game, and it felt really good to finally do that. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that the reason why I beat that game, why I beat Crash 3, is because I had that pressure. Like, if I don't beat the game, I'm gonna have to start all over. Everything that I've worked hard for so far, I'm gonna lose it all if I don't beat this fucking game. So I kind of got the experience of what gamers in the late 80s to early 90s went through, that if they didn't finish the entire game in one go, they were pretty much fucked because you couldn't save your games back then. So I kind of got to experience that a little bit. It was really cool. It was definitely a very unique experience that I've had through my, almost 20 years of playing video games. Yeah, I think it was the pressure of not being able to save my progress, because every other game that I had as a kid, I was able to just save it and finish it later, but I'd never finish it. Because I don't think that Crash 3 was an easier game to finish than Battle for Bikini Bottom, for example. I don't think that it was just an easy game. I think it was quite challenging, actually, from what I remember. As far as, 100%ing a game, completing it and unlocking, getting all the unlockables and, doing everything that there is to do, I don't think I've ever done that before, because I found that to be just way too repetitive and not a very rewarding experience for me, so I would never even bother doing that. The only games I ever 100% completed before were the Telltale games, where literally if you just beat the story, if you get through the single player or whatever, the story in the Telltale game, you get a platinum trophy. So those are really the only games I ever 100% completed. So when I say beating a game, I just mean getting through the final boss and playing the game normally. But I asked you guys in the community tab, what was the first game that you ever beat? And Steven Becker says it was Metroid on the NES. It was the culmination of an entire childhood of memorizing rooms, making maps, and writing down passwords. Totally worth it in the end. Wow, yeah, I can imagine how difficult it was to get through these games on, during the 8-bit era and the 16-bit era. I was kind of talking about that in this video. Yeah, I know that there were passwords. So, if you got through a level, they give you a password, and, you write the password down, and you can kind of, continue your progress that way. But it was definitely a lot harder to get through those games back then, because they were a lot less forgiving. I actually never played a minute of Metroid on the NES before. I don't think I've actually played a single Metroid game in my life. So that's something that I have to do in the future, because I feel like me never playing Metroid, that's a gaming sin, and I need to repent. But Dr. Daniel 316, he says that the first game that he ever beat was James Bond 007 Agent Under Fire for GameCube. It was the first I remember beating. It was insane for me at the time, as I couldn't believe it. Then I went on to beat it 100 times now, I'm sure, just because that's how fun the game is and how much I love it. I actually never played that one. The only James Bond games that I ever played were 2 games. And this is kind of weird, because you think, the one game that you played is 007 on the N64. Actually never played that shit before, ever. So that's another thing that is a sin in gaming. Never playing 007. I just don't think it aged quite well. I saw gameplay, I'm there's no way I'm going to enjoy this, because by the time I knew about it, I was already 10, 11, 12 years old, and I was playing on the fucking PS3. I was playing Call of Duty, so I'm yeah, no, I'm not going to give 007 on the N64 a real chance. Unfortunately, I never did. Maybe I should in the future, but I don't think I'll really appreciate it like I would if I was around in 1996 when it came out. But the 2 007 games I did play were the 007 remake on the Wii. I also got 007 Reloaded, which was a remaster of the remake. If you're following me, yeah, it's kind of convoluted, but yeah, it was a remaster of the remake on the Wii, and it was on the Xbox 360. So I got the game twice for those 2 systems, and I enjoyed it. I liked the multiplayer. That's really what I got into. I didn't really play much of the campaign. It was actually the only Wii game that I remember being a lot of fun online, and then when I got the same game again on the 360, it was good, but I think it was a lot more charming on the Wii with the motion controls and everything. But I also had 007 Bloodstone, I think it was called. Yeah, it was Bloodstone, and it was a third-person action game instead of an FPS, and I thought it was pretty cool. It was a nice game. The single player was fun. The multiplayer was a lot of fun also, and I had that on PS3. So those are the only 2 games I ever played in the James Bond series. I know there's a lot of James Bond games, and I've heard a lot of good things. I've also heard a lot of bad things about some of the other ones, but for the most part, James Bond, the video games are actually quite good. Magnum Master's first game that he beat was Super Mario World. It was really crazy for me to actually beat a game back then because I was 5. I struggled to get far into many other Super Nintendo games due to their difficulty and my lack of skill. Well, if it makes you feel any better, you were definitely a lot more skilled at video games when you were 5 years old than me when I was 5. There's no way I would have been able to beat Super Mario World when I was like 7 or 8 years old, never mind 5, even 10. I don't know if I could beat it now, to be honest with you guys. I'm pretty shitty at those kind of games. The only game I'm really half decent at, to be honest, is Call of Duty. And then we got Samuel Kleiss. If I recall correctly, I think it was New Super Mario Bros. For the Wii. People tend to give that series a bad rep, but I have a lot of memories playing with family members and spending almost a whole year trying to beat it, and it was my first Mario game and one of my first games in general. When I go back and play it now, it's fine, not special, but fine, although I still place a lot of sentimental value with the memories that game gave me. I think we could all, like, kind of like, what's the word, empathize with that, like the idea of, like, you know a game is not good, but you still have, like, a lot of nostalgia for it, even though it really wasn't anything special, but it was special to you because it was like one of the first games you ever played, like you said, and that's kind of crazy. Like, your first game was New Super Mario Bros. That was like, what, back in 2009? So you're pretty young. You're actually not that young, because 2009 was 12 years ago. You're a lot younger than I am. I'm almost 23, but it's crazy to think that your first video game that you ever played was after I created my YouTube channel, because I started this shit 12 years ago in April, actually. April 2009 was when I created my first YouTube channel. This YouTube channel was created in August of 2009. So the fact that people are watching this channel, some of them, a lot of them, weren't even born yet when I created it. And that's just crazy to think. But that's really cool. Yeah, as far as like the new Super Mario Bros. Series, like my opinion on it, I don't think I ever bought the Wii version. I had it on Nintendo DS, New Super Mario Bros. DS. And I thought it was actually quite fun. But I think, the new Super Mario Bros. Series, kind of like what you alluded to, it wasn't like anything special. It was good, but I think it overstayed its welcome. Definitely by the time we got to like New Super Mario Bros. U and then the 3DS version, yeah, it was just enough was enough. It's time to move on from that. And I'm glad Nintendo eventually did. I don't think anyone, even the most diehard Nintendo fan, is begging for another new Super Mario Bros. Game. Like, yeah, no, just like put that shit to rest. But then Jalen Johnson, the first game that he completed was Madagascar for the Nintendo GameCube. I never played the console version, but I actually had Madagascar on the Game Boy Advance. I had the regular game, and I also had the Penguins of Madagascar game on the GBA. And I thought those two games were actually quite good. I had a lot of fun with them. I never played the console version, though. So let me know if you made it this far, Jalen, if it's actually any good, because I might just check it out for the fuck of it. I'll read one more comment. It's going to be from Baby Stealer 4. Interesting username. The first game I ever completed was Tak and the Power of Juju. The game is probably a cakewalk for most teens and adults, but as a 7-year-old in 2003, this game was my Dark Souls. I know using the Dark Souls comparison is overused, but that's how I felt about it. Fight me. Most people I run into, they know about this game either by its sequel or that shitty Nickelodeon spinoff. Don't watch it if you care about human existence. The game is easy as an adult for the most part, minus the platforming segments. If you enjoy games like Banjo-Kazooie, you'd probably enjoy it as well. I suggest playing it on an emulator though for the 16:9 aspect ratio and the high FPS, or wait for the re-release that's coming at some point. Thanks for reading, Chad. Well, thank you for your comment. You clearly put a lot of time into writing it. I love reading your comments. It's a lot of fun, even though it makes the video a lot longer than it otherwise should be. I think it's a nice dynamic for this channel that makes it stand apart from other YouTube channels out there. And I'm definitely going to miss it when this channel comes to an end very soon. Yeah, I announced on Twitter, if you guys didn't see, that this YouTube channel, I'm going to stop making videos by the end of the month. So be prepared for that if you didn't know already. And I'll make a video explaining why it has to be the way it is. But I want to actually address Baby Stealer's comment because he did put a lot of time into it. Tak and the Power of Juju is a game that I also played when I was a kid. I remember my grandmother, she got it for me. I don't remember if it was Christmas or fucking Thanksgiving. I don't remember what holiday it was, but I remember my grandmother got me Tak and the Power of Juju because it's very rare for my grandma to buy me video games. I think that was like the only video game she ever got for me. So it kind of stands out in my memory for that reason. The actual game I remember being okay. It wasn't anything special. Like, I thought it was like actually a pretty good game. But yeah, I never came close to beating it. I don't think I even got like halfway through it. I remember I had a really hard time getting through it when I was a kid, as I did with most games during my childhood. But I'll definitely check it out if it's true that what you're saying about Tak and the Power of Juju getting a remaster or a remake, whatever it is. I assume it's a remake because that's what they did with Battle for Bikini Bottom. It was a remake of the game with Unreal Engine 4, I think. And it was pretty much like recreating the game from the ground up. I assume they're going to do that in the other Nickelodeon re-releases that come out in the future. I hope that the other game they do is Fairly Odd Parents, because that was another really good Nickelodeon game back in the day. I remember Cartoon Network's video games were shit, like Ed, Edd n Eddy, Kids Next Door. They were awful, but the Nickelodeon games are always really good quality stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to more remasters or re-releases of my favorite childhood games in the future. But hopefully, you know, if that does good enough, they actually start creating new games from, I guess, new Nickelodeon shows, I guess, or maybe even another SpongeBob game. That would be cool. Even though I don't really care about Nickelodeon, I haven't really watched Nickelodeon in, I'd say, about 10 years at this point. I think it would be cool if they just, like, you know, instead of focusing on re-releases, eventually they get to the point where they make new games. And as far as Attacking the Power of Juju TV show, yeah, it was awful. One of the worst TV shows I've ever seen. I think Fanboy and Chum Chum was definitely the worst Nick show that I've watched in my memory. That was just so fucking annoying. I hated it so much. But yeah, Attacking the Power of Juju, it was disappointing because I remember the game was a lot of fun. Then I watched it on TV. I'm like, this is crap. What the hell is this? I don't think it lasted very long. I don't think it got more than like 1 or 2 seasons. Yeah, it wasn't very good. And I know there were video game sequels to the Attacking the Power of Juju game. There was Tak 2, there was Tak 3. I actually owned those games for whatever reason, but I never even beat the first one. That was really weird. Like, why? If I never beat the first game, why would I buy the second Tak game? But that's what I would do for all these fucking games that I played back then. I would buy the sequel without even getting through the first one. Yeah, I was pretty shitty at video games. I don't know what was wrong with me, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.